Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Frank Jobert, Legislative and Governmental Affairs Director with the Retired State Employees Association, better known as RSCA. First, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in who's going to be viewing this video presentation. I'd like to recognize right off the bat all of our chapter presidents, and I'll read them in alphabetical order by location. We have Ms. Penny Babin from Acadiana, Victor Dennis from Alexandria, James LeBlanc from Baton Rouge. We have a vacancy in our coastal chapter, as I appreciate the situation. Ms. Peggy Bowers recently stepped down. We have Gwen Thompson of Lake Charles, Diane Guillot of Monroe, Benny Harris of New Orleans, David Thomas of North Shore, and he's also the statewide president in addition to the North Shore chapter president, and also Ms. Benita Hearn out of the Shreveport-Bossier area. That is our current chapter member lineup for our presidencies. I'd also like to recognize the members themselves and thank you once again for tuning in. And likewise, I'd like to just thank all of our RSCA board members, those others who are not chapter presidents but serve in various other capacities, either as liaisons, ex officio members, or even some at-large members that we have from around the state, also serving on our board as board members who are voting on everything that RSCA does. And likewise, I'd like to recognize our executive director, Jimmy Anthony, otherwise known as the administrative director. They call me the legislative and governmental affairs director, so we've separated those two functions into two different part-time positions. Our office manager is Susan Jandal, and our membership and communications coordinator is Ms. Linda Price. So that's the lineup. And as I mentioned earlier, Dave Thomas is our current RSCA statewide president. You'll probably be hearing from him later on in the presentations in a separate video that he has prepared for this purpose as well. This is our annual chapter meeting roundup or circuit that we're going to be doing. We have 9 chapters. I just read off the names of the presidents. So we normally travel statewide at this time of the year, go around to all corners of the state of Louisiana. But this year, because of the COVID situation, I know everybody's just starting to get their vaccinations, may have already gotten one or maybe both, but we still haven't reached the point where we've gotten herd immunity yet. So we're going to have to just do it by video or by virtual fashion. Let me start off by just recapping for everyone that our mission of RSCA is the same as always. We're here to protect and defend your healthcare and retirement benefits to the best extent possible. In the past, our goal was always to try to enhance those benefits. I find myself nowadays more or less trying to protect the benefits that we already have, because it seems like there's always someone or some entity looking to strip us of those benefits or in some way or another pare them back to some extent. So we do try to at least play good defense and hold on to what we have, and we've been pretty successful at that. But there's always an opportunity every legislative session for something to happen, and we're going to be coming up on one shortly, and I'll be getting into the content of the legislative session a little bit later in my talk. I also like to stipulate every time that I make one of these presentations that we welcome active retirees and also active employees and retirees side by side with one another. Our interests are aligned. It's not a situation where it's us versus them. It's a we situation. And I always keep that in mind anytime I go to the Capitol and testify before any committees. I try to speak on behalf of both current retirees and our active employees / our future retirees. So we are here and we work in a capacity, and our slogan is, we're working today for your tomorrow. That's been our motto for the last several years. And we mean what we say, and we say what we mean. We are cognizant of the fact that there are strength in numbers, and the more members we have, the more beneficial it is when I go to the Capitol and tell them we represent 10,000 members or more. But when I tell them there's only 100 or 200 active employees, that doesn't carry as much weight, especially if it's an idea or a bill that's being floated that would affect active employees more so than retirees. And as I said, I try to speak on behalf of both groups. And then if we find out there's only 100 people I'm speaking for, maybe they're not as ready to assist us or to vote the way that we are hoping that they would vote. But nonetheless, thank those members, both active and retired, who are members of RSCA. It's our pleasure to serve you. I'm going to quickly cover, as quickly as I can, some of the past accomplishments of RSCA. We did fight the sale and privatization of OGB during the Governor General administration. Bobby Jindal was there. He wanted to privatize the whole thing. As it turned out, we did lay off about 130 state employees from OGB, and they handled the administrative aspects of the program. They turned that over to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana as a third-party administrator that primarily pays the claims that we submit and keep us in sync with a lot of the other Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, allowing us to use a lot of their provider network and therefore attain better pricing for services that we render to our members through the OGB program. We also did fight successfully the cash balance plan. This was back in 2012 or 2013. We took that bill, which had passed the legislature, and it was signed by the governor. We took it to court, and we were successful in defeating that, both in the 19th Judicial District and then ultimately in the Louisiana Supreme Court. I think it was an 8-0 vote, and so it was a unanimous vote, and we're very proud of that. Cost us a little money. It was about a $75,000 price tag associated with it, but we were able to preserve the defined benefit plan, both for current employees, current retirees, and even future employees who hadn't even been hired yet. Also, I was elected to the OGB, Officer Group Benefits Board of Directors, for a 6-year term back on July 1st, 2016. I have another year and a half or so left on that term, and I'll be coming up for re-election in 2022. We also fought on many occasions in the last several years efforts to preserve the defined benefit plan, better known as a DB plan, versus the DC plan and other hybrid options that have been floated by Representative Ivey and others. We don't want to single out Representative Ivey, but he usually does carry the water on those bills. And I do not see any in the hopper for this year's upcoming session, but you never know. I always have to be cognizant of the fact that it could surface in some way along the process of the legislative session. So we're always leery about those, and we keep an eye out to make sure that we don't see anything sneak into the legislative session that we would be opposed to. We also fought with great success back in 2016. There was a study committee that was looking at different ways to either increase taxation or, on one hand, decrease taxation in some categories and increase taxation in other categories. But one of the things that was being floated was to repeal the retiree state income tax exemption on our retirement benefits. That did not pass. We attended all the hearings. We testified. We submitted letters to the committee members. I spoke to the individual committee members one-on-one, and we were able to beat that back, and it never did end up coming out in the final report that was issued by the commission back in 2017. I note with great interest in recent headlines in the local press that there will be some other tax bills coming up in this session. Of course, it is a fiscal session, and this is one of the years that they can deal with revenue measures, i.e. taxes. So we'll once again be on the lookout for anything that might impede our exemption that we currently enjoy, and I'll be looking out for those bills should they surface as the session goes on. But at this point, I don't see anything in the hopper, but you never know. It could always end up as a hitchhiker amendment on another bill that's going through the process, so we have to be aware of it at all times. We did get a couple of COLAs. I know it's something that we'd like to get every year or as often as possible, but we did get one in 2014, another one in 15, which was vetoed by then Governor Jindal, but we were able to come back in 2016 and get one. And as it turns out, there is no COLA that's scheduled this year for retirees in general. I'll jump ahead a little bit and tell you a little bit about a COLA bill that is in the hopper this year. It's what we call a minimum retiree COLA. It's Senate Bill 24 by Senator Ed Price. And that bill at this point basically stipulates something along these lines, that if anyone makes less than $1,450 a month minimum on their COLA, which is the federal poverty wage, $1,450 a month, and it so happens that 752 people in LASers, either as retirees or beneficiaries of LASers, that would be eligible should the bill pass in its present form. It looks like they would get either a $300 a month increase maximum to bring them up to $1,450 a month, or they would get the difference between what they currently earn and $1,450 a month, assuming it's less than $450 a month currently. So bottom line is that price tag for that is small, or a fewer number of the people that would be impacted is $11.7 million. And that has to come out of the experience account, which is the funding mechanism for COLAs. And there's about 12 million in the account, so we can barely do the $300 a month increase for the limited number of people that it is. And that would only be for those numbers of folks that I just described. And it's a $300 a month increase, 11.7 million. I would mention in that vein that it's going to cover people who have 30 years of service, have been retired about 15 years, I believe it is. And there's several other criteria. They could not have been members of the drop or accepted an IBO. So if you want to check the bill out further, pull it up on the legislative website. It's Senate Bill 24 by Senator Ed Price. Let me jump quickly to the WEP and GPO, which is a hot topic on the Social Security front. It's one of the things that's my biggest disappointment as a legislative director and as a member of RSEA and as a state retiree in general, is that we have not had any success to speak of in repealing the WEP or the GPO. There is a bill in the hopper in Congress. It's referred to as the 117th Congress, and it's HR 82 by Representative Rodney Davis, who's a Republican out of Illinois. The bill has 94 co-sponsors as of today. I just checked before we signed on. And it turns out that that bill would literally repeal in its entirety both the WEP and the GPO, which is the government pension offset. The WEP, of course, is the windfall elimination provision. Both of those measures would be repealed in their entirety, effective on or about December of 2021. Once we get it passed in the United States Congress. First, as I said, it's been introduced in the House, but we're also going to be hopefully seeing some companion piece of legislation in the Senate at some point. And we have received positive feedback. 4 of our Louisiana congressional representatives have already signed on as co-sponsors for HR 82. And also on the other side of the fence, the Senate side, while it hasn't been introduced on the Senate side yet, we did get a nice letter from Senator Bill Cassidy that he is in favor of HR 82. And we may very well see another measure, which we would call a companion measure, surfaces in the Senate side. Having said that, we're also aware of a situation that could occur. And I heard this on a YouTube video the other day by a gentleman by the name of Tim Lee. Tim is the counterpart for Jimmy Anthony, who's our our executive director. Tim Lee is the executive director of TRTA, which is the Texas Retired Teachers Association. And he's leading a coalition of states, including Massachusetts, which is one of the states, and Texas, that are affected by the WEP and the GPO. And he's heard, I hate to use the word rumors, had some information surface that they may be reintroducing another measure by Ways and Means Committee Chairman, a Democrat out of Massachusetts by the name of Richard Neal. Chairman Neal had introduced a bill a couple of years ago in 2019. The bill did have 154 co-sponsors, but it never did get voted on in the committee, and consequently never did pass onto the floor where it could be voted upon. So it's something that may resurface. The only downside, and I use the term loosely, to that legislation is that, as I recall, the original legislation 2 years ago only affected the WEP formula and not the GPO. So it would not do any good for the GPO folks, but it would help the WEP folks. And I always like to say this, that if it turns out that a bill passes and it only helps one side of the group that we're trying to assist, at least it's putting the Congress on record and they're recognizing there's an issue and a problem that needs fixing. And I would like to think that we can come back in a subsequent session or with a bill later on and get the GPO folks included as well. But again, that's the latest word on the grapevine, is that there may be another companion bill coming out on the Senate side, similar to HR 4540 that was in the 116th Congress back in 2019. So we'll be looking for that to surface somewhere along the way, hopefully. Also, we did fight in the year 2017, 2018, and 2019, the fact that there was a bill floating through the legislature for a statewide constitutional convention. We don't have any problem with the constitutional convention. We just don't want any retirement legislation to be in the call. That is where our retirement benefits are protected. It's Article 10, Section 29 of the state constitution. Those benefits are protected. And if they go into a constitutional convention, they could very well strip that protection from us. And that would be something we would be adamantly opposed to. So consequently, at this point, we're always leery and weary of that. If that happens to resurface again, we'll be opposed to that. And we'll be calling upon you to call your legislators and let them know our position on that bill if it was to surface. And at this point, it hasn't. So it's a good thing. Now, let me go right into the upcoming session. It's going to start on April 12th. It's going to run for 60 days, 60 calendar days until June 10th, 2021. It's a shortened session. It's a fiscal session. Legislators can only introduce 5 other non-fiscal bills, and consequently, it's a little bit shorter. As of today, I checked, there's only 12 House bills that we're tracking, and only one that I'm particularly interested in that deals on the retirement front. There's another 10 bills on the Senate side that we'll probably be tracking, and only about 4 of those have to do with retirement, group insurance, or taxation. As I mentioned earlier, taxation is one of those things we're always looking for. Nothing directly impacting us, but it could in some way, shape, or form impact us. So we're going to be monitoring those bills as well. Just to give you the numbers offhand, if you want to track them yourself, it's Senate Bill 3. It's a bill having to do with some OGB issues. Senate Bill 11, which has to do with income tax exemptions. Senate Bill 22, which has to do with retirement eligibility and retirement disability. And Senate Bill 24, which is the minimum COLA bill that I spoke about earlier, having to do with anyone making $1,450 a month or less on their pension. One of the ones I'm most worried about in that group is Senate Bill 22. That's by Senator Peacock. From my reading of the bill, it's a lengthy bill, and I will be attending the Legislators board meeting in the next 2 weeks, and they'll have the attorneys scrutinize the bills and be delivering the breakdown of what exactly it entails. I'll be attending that meeting and getting some guidance from them, and then bringing my recommendations to the legislative committee of RSEA. So we'll take formal positions. It looks like that's not really something we're going to be too happy with. It raises the retirement age, if I'm reading it correctly, to age 67. So you'd have to be a minimum of age 67 to retire. Currently, it's 62. And when I retired, it was 30 years at any age. So it keeps changing over time. But it seems like this is a rather dramatic increase, that someone would have to work to their age 67 to get their full pension benefits. And he's tying that number, age 67, to the Social Security minimum. And that Social Security minimum keeps changing over the years. And the way the legislation is written, it would continue to go up and dovetail with the Social Security formula for the age requirement to retire. So that number could go up to 67, 68, 69, and whatever Social Security goes up to over the ensuing years. So we want to be very, very much aware of that bill. Won't affect anybody who's already retired. It probably wouldn't affect anyone who is already working. The language of the bill is it wouldn't take effect until anyone starts state employment until after July 1st, 2021. But it's something, again, we want to consider and look at and then take a formal position on, which we'll let you know either on our e-blast and or our newsletters and then subsequent correspondence that we'll post on the RSCA website. Speaking of COLAs, there is a committee report that was issued. It was a systems report issued by lasers, teachers, state police, and school employees. I attended the hearing on December 17th in the Capitol before a joint retirement committee meeting consisting of both the House and Senate retirement committee members. This was in response to two resolutions that passed last session, one by Senator Price and the other one by Representative Lance Harris, that asked the systems to study the COLA methodologies we currently use and perhaps come up with some other formula or way of granting COLAs, since we're not getting them as frequently as everyone would like. But I'll go over quickly, if I can find my notes here, exactly what they're proposing, or at least what they could propose, which is going to require some legislation. But a couple of the ideas that they floated, I've got the report here. It's about an inch thick. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to cherry pick the part dealing with the alternative COLA ideas. PBIs is the other word we use for them, permanent benefit increases, PBI. Right off the bat, obviously one of the ways they could do it is that the employer, i.e. the state of Louisiana, would increase their contributions to the system and fund COLAs through that mechanism. We could also continue with the use of the experience account under the current conditions, but that's why we're not getting a COLA as frequently as we would like. That's one of the things that we want to change. So they may lower some of the hurdles that are required to grant a COLA by putting less of a percentage into the Lasers account before they put money into the experience account. So we would get money to fund COLAs a little quicker. There's even one proposal, or at least one thought process, that would lower the hurdles. They call it a hurdle holiday, to where they would skip the contribution back to Lasers and put the money right into the experience account a lot quicker, in which case we'd have money to pay for the COLA. There's also another combination of increased employer and employee contributions. Another idea, which wouldn't help retirees necessarily, but would help future retirees, where they could pre-fund the COLAs either by employer or employee or some combination of the two, by pre-funding their COLAs in advance of retirement, so that when they do retire, the money would be there, basically for their lifetime, to grant COLAs on a scheduled basis systematically. And last but not least, one of the other ideas that's floated around is a 13th check, which would be a one-time COLA. It wouldn't be a PBI where it would be a permanent benefit increase where it would repeat itself. It would be more or less a shot in the arm, similar to some of these stimulus checks you might be getting through the federal COVID legislation that's been going through Congress and now has passed 2 or 3 times. So it'd be a one-time shot in the arm, maybe a few $100. It would be a 13th check. And they call it a 13th check because everybody gets 12, or one monthly check per month for the 12 months of the calendar year. That would add one more to make it a 13th check. So that's something else we want to keep an eye out on, is future legislation that would help us get COLAs a little quicker. I don't see any bills that have been filed thus far. Chances are it won't be this year, but again, being a fiscal session, it might be better to wait till next year. When it's a regular general session, we'll have many more chances to have bills relating to retirement issues that will be in the hopper. And perhaps maybe even the state's fiscal condition will be better, at least for the retirement systems, because they're doing very well on their investment returns thus far. When I attended the Lasers meeting, I guess it was earlier in last week of February, they were up like 19.5% market return, which is not the actuarial return. It does an impressive number. If we could even approach anything resembling that number, that would greatly enhance our ability to put money in the COLA account / experience account, where perhaps in the year 2022, we'd be able to get a COLA. But that still remains to be seen. It's a long ways off, so I won't speculate anymore on that point. So those are kind of things that are in the hopper thus far this year. As I mentioned, back in, I guess it was the 116th Congress of Correction, the United States Congress, H.R. 4540 was the Richard Neal bill. It ended up with 154 co-sponsors, but as I said earlier, it didn't end up moving. So we want to continue to hope and pray that something like that comes along where we'll have an opportunity. And there's 2 vacant congressional seats. That's why we only have 4 of our Louisiana representatives signed on at this point. The other 2 seats, the one that was formerly occupied by Cedric Richmond in New Orleans, is vacant. And the other one, which was formerly occupied by Representative Ralph Abraham, is vacant. The seat was originally won by Luke Letlow, who would have been sworn in, but he passed away from COVID-19. And they're now having an election for that seat, which is one of the 2 that are still up for grabs. So once those elections are held, the early voting period is going on right now, and the election itself is March 20th. Once those seats are settled in, hopefully we can prevail upon those 2 newly elected representatives, whoever they might be, to join on as co-sponsors for that bill as well. Other than that, I guess I'll just kind of wrap up my remarks. It's probably going on longer. I want to just hit this real quick. The officer group benefits did have no rate increases in 2018 and 2019, which was remarkable. But unfortunately, we did have a 5% rate increase in 2020, and we had another 5% rate increase in 2021. Both of those are effective on the first day of the new year. And we had a nice, impressive reserve balance of about $250 million. I haven't gotten an update on that figure as of today, but it's in the $200 million plus range, and we want to keep it in that range. The actuaries recommend $200 million or better to make sure we keep the program on sound footing. So again, it's not a bad amount of an increase. It's worse than we would like, especially in view of no COLAs, but statewide and even throughout the United States, insurance premiums run anywhere from 6 to 10% increases, even on private plans every year. And ours is a self-funded plan. So we're trying to just stay within our budget, pay our claims, and still have enough money to carry over for the following year. But it turns out that we do have to raise premiums periodically. And we try to hold on as much as we can on that, and we will continue to try to do that going forward. One other bill that was in the hopper last year, it's not in the hopper this year. It was an OGB bill that was House Bill 325. It was called the Mandatory Medicare Advantage Plan Bill by Representative Eccles. I do not see that bill being filed again in this session. So that's a good thing. We were opposed to that. It's my understanding that the freedom of choice for selection of your doctor, your hospital, and other medical service providers could be impacted by that legislation. It would also most likely restrict out-of-state options for specialized medical services currently provided by OGB. And in some cases, it would impact our out-of-state retirees who do have traditional OGB plans, not under the Medicare Advantage Plan umbrella, that would also have their coverage impacted out of state. So we want to prevent that from happening. I'll close by saying that from time to time, we ask you to help us to either defeat a bad bill or help us to get a good bill passed. And we ask you to contact your legislators. We will have a full list of legislators by district, and that'll be posted on our website, and it'll be, which is rseala.org, rseala.org. So when you're contacting your legislators, and we'll have their phone numbers and email addresses, especially for those who are state employees, always use your personal email or your personal equipment. Don't use state telephones or state equipment, or do it on state time. Retirees don't have to worry about that. But likewise, whenever you call, be polite, make your story personal, and then always thank your legislator for their support. And I'll close by telling a story. I tell it every time I have a chance because it goes to my opening remarks about their strength in numbers, and we need more members to help us get the word out about RSCA and do the things we do best to help enhance membership benefits, and on both the retirement and also on the group insurance front. This story is by Senator Butch Gotro. He was the chairman of the Senate Retirement Committee. He was also an OGB board member until his passing just about a year ago. He passed away. But he told me this story, and he said this kind of goes to the story about strength in numbers. He told me that when he was in the Senate, he would get phone calls, emails, faxes. People would drop by his legislative office, either at the Capitol or back home in his district. And if, one or two or three or four people made an inquiry about a particular legislative instrument, surely he would pay attention to it, and he would also react to it. And he'd listen to the folks and take their side of the argument into consideration. But he said at other times he would get 30, 40, 50, 100, 150, 200 phone calls, emails, faxes, office visits, etc. And he says that would definitely get his attention. And what he was trying to say is, and he did say it, that the more people that he heard about on a particular issue or heard from on a particular issue, it would definitely get his attention. And it goes to the point about strength in numbers. It just stands to reason when more people call you and discuss something with you, it's something that's a much higher priority in their eyes, and they're asking the legislature to likewise consider it a high priority in their eyes and vote according to their constituents' wishes. So if you could, recruit another member for us. If you have a friend or coworker or fellow retiree, and you're already an RSCA member, you can get just one more member to join with you. You can take our membership from 10,000 to 20,000. We would double our clout. We'll go to the Capitol and make our arguments and presentations on your behalf. And Frank can't do it alone, and neither can Jimmy. We can both go to the Capitol. We can both say our piece, but when we have 10,000 or 15,000 people backing us up, again, making the phone calls and sending the emails and faxes and so forth, the message is loud and clear, and the legislators do react to that because they know senior citizens like ourselves, we're chronic voters. We do vote. We used to have a slogan at RSCA, retirees vote, and we changed it to retirees always vote. We're chronic voters. They know that. And when no one else is voting, we're out there in the cold and the rain and whatever else is necessary to get our votes cast. So I ask you to continue working with us at RSCA. Help us to protect your tomorrow by working with us today. I want to close by saying thank you for listening to this video. Thank you for your state service. And thank you once again for your membership at RSCA. Have a good day.